Welcome. We'll begin in about 3 minutes after people have had a chance to sign in. I know there was a little confusion this month over the new method I used to get the word out on the meetings with the calendar holder. And then someone in the group was able to cancel it. And I know that led to confusion, but we are still meeting, of course, today. And hopefully you got the reminder email earlier in the day. I think we originally had 50 some odd that accepted the calendar invite saying they would attend. And we're about 45 short of that right now. So hopefully everybody's checking email and realizing it has not been canceled and will join us today. Promises to be a good meeting. We'll begin at about noon. Unless someone in the group has something they'd like to report on from their neighborhood, something that's going on. Open mics. You're always welcome to jump in and share. Yeah, right, Lydia. We're not a very talkative bunch, are we today? In fact, there's not much of a bunch here. Well, lesson learned on being creative and getting meeting notices sent out. I won't ever use that method again. Learn from your mistakes. That's what I always say. So, lesson learned. Well, it is 12 noon, and I always want to be a good steward of people's time, and we have several interviews today. I'll watch. Hopefully, we'll have others join in as we go. This is, of course, Neighboring 101, where we talk with leaders involved in the neighboring movement all across the state and the nation in order to discover ways for organizations and individuals to use this idea of neighboring as part of community and personal development. So now I was planning on being on vacation this week, so I had planned these video interviews so they could be run without me. But instead, last week, my wife and I decided to catch COVID instead. And so we're still under quarantine and not taking a vacation. I will add that we were both vaccinated. She had Johnson & Johnson. I had Pfizer vaccine, but we both still caught it. Hopefully a lighter, milder case. I'll try to hold down my coughing today. So instead, I'm here live, but we will still have some video interviews that are exclusive to this group. They're on YouTube, but they're unlisted, so you're only getting them here in this class. Just as a lead-in, since I'm live, I guess, a small report from my neighborhood. What's red, white, and blue and worn by 42 children? That would be our first 4th of July parade in our neighborhood. We had 42 children entered, nearly 100 spectators that showed up and enjoyed the day. Every kid left with a prize in the parade. And we've had follow-up interviews. 94% of participants, parents rated the parade a success or as excellent. We already have some sponsors lined up for next year. And I'll share a link there. That's a link to a video of a portion of our parade if you want to see that. It's something that's pretty easy to pull together. If you have an interest in doing that in your own neighborhood, we have a park adjacent to us, and Didn't take a whole lot of effort. We were pretty easy to get sponsors for something involving children. And so it was a good day for our first try for sure. And we have a little bit of a informational item online about some steps to planning a basic event. This might be some helpful steps for you if you're thinking about doing an event and want some guidance in that area. So that's from my neighborhood, but from the county, from Greene County, we have a grant program underway in the county where we're providing $250 for neighborhood events. We have 9 neighborhoods that have already applied. I'll provide a link to a story here in just a little bit. And some of the requests from these neighborhoods for this $250 has ranged from ice cream socials to a Veterans Day parade in a neighborhood, to a potluck dinner on National Good Neighbor Day, a food truck party and a cul-de-sac, a neighborhood work day. One neighborhood's going to do a Halloween candy trail. Neighbors are going to set little tables along the main sidewalk for the neighborhood and have a Halloween candy trail. All kind of fun ideas for pulling people together and getting people involved in their neighborhood. So I'll keep you apprised of some of those as those happen, but some unique ways to get neighbors having fun together. So I wanted to share those with you. But let's jump on in to our first interview today. We have 3, and our first one is with Dave Runyon. Dave Runyon is the author of, pardon me, I'm multitasking. Dave Runyon is the author of The Art of Neighboring. If you've not had a chance to read that, I'd highly recommend it. And this is going to be showcasing a short interview with him on the basics of that book. Sorry, making sure I've shared the sound also. There we go. And hope you enjoy this 20-minute interview with Dave Runyon.
Dave, thank you for joining us from Colorado today.
It's great to be on with you, David.
I know that this neighboring concept is something you have talked about with lots of government entities and cities and universities as well. And hopefully maybe you can kind of open with that and let us know what that kind of looks like for those types of organizations and in those settings.
Yeah, well, I fell into this backwards. I was part of about 11 years ago that we're coming together trying to figure out if we were going to serve our city together, what's the smartest thing that we would go after? And so a lot of the people in the room were faith leaders, including myself at the time. And so we had our mayor in the room, and we asked our mayor, tell us a little bit about, and so we're getting to know him. And then we said, hey, if you could wave a magic wand and change something in our community, what would it be? And he had this laundry list of great ideas. He said, I want to live in a community where there's no single moms below the poverty line, where there's no at-risk kids, there's no financial debt or elderly shut-ins. And so he's got this laundry list of things. He gets done with it, and he says at the end, he goes, if you guys wanted to do something that would change our city the most, you should start a neighboring movement. And then he kind of said that in passing and just went on. And we're like, no, talk more about that. And he said, what we're learning at the city level is that relationships trump programs. And that when people are connected based on proximity, it takes a lot of weight off of the systems that the city is trying to create for people in need. And it was such a profound moment, especially for a lot of the people in the room that were faith leaders of different faith backgrounds. But all the faith backgrounds, have this idea of love your neighbor interwoven into their core teaching. And we're sitting there listening to our mayor say, hey, if all you faith leaders would just do what you say is one of the most basic tenets, it would change our city overnight, which was incredibly convicting for me and for a lot of the people in the room. And it just sent me on a journey, David, of going back to the basics and starting to think about this idea of like, who are the people that live 30, 40, 50 feet away from me? How much time and energy am I putting into actually just being available or getting to know these people? And then what a profound difference it makes when we begin to be connected with the people that live around us, and when people do that at scale. And so it's been a wild ride over the last 11 years. I just keep taking the next step. It started with really basic thoughts for me. When I had this moment with our mayor, I had met all of my neighbors. but most of them I didn't remember their names. And so for me, it was going back and just doing small things of like grabbing my neighbor and seeing him outside and going, hey, listen, I know we've met 3 times. I forgot your name. And then just doing little things, writing down their names, using their names when I see them, not driving 20 minutes for a round trip for 2 things from the grocery store when I could actually just borrow something and replenish it later. And so it's the small things that make a big difference in this whole world, and I've been really encouraged, and I'm drinking all the Kool-Aid on neighboring, David. I can't go back now. Oh, for sure. I mean, in our own city, we saw a huge decrease in the number of calls to code enforcement. So we started this whole movement around know your neighbors' names, retain their names, use their names, and then throw good parties. And so that's what we did in our city. And after about 3 years, we started to see this significant decrease in calls to code enforcement. And, this isn't like verifiable data, but our city leaders came back and said, the only thing we can explain this is that people know each other better. And so they're picking up the phone and calling us less, and they're actually walking across the street more, which was really, really encouraging. Yeah, and the neighborhood watch movement has faded some. I think there was a lot of well-intentioned people. The primary focus was on safety. So it was a little bit of like, we've got to band together and make sure that we keep crime out of our neighborhood. So that's a little bit different posture than what we come at it with. We come at it with, hey, listen, the difference between living in a neighborhood where you know who live around you and you're connected to those people, or living in a neighborhood that's isolated and where everybody just shuts their garage door, the difference between living in those 2 neighborhoods is massive. It's massive. It affects the way that we live and the way we experience. I mean, I personally, I could probably live in a little bit nicer house, but or a lot nicer house, but I love what I have in my neighborhood. I'm not going anywhere. I know that there's been years of equity built in and connection, and it's really valuable to me personally. And I think most people, when you begin to talk with them, they know that. And the difference between having neighborhoods in those 2 categories is just, are the people in those neighborhoods willing to create a little bit of margin to start getting to know each other and just be available, just be visible, just spend time in your front yard is one of the best things we can do. And so the neighborhood watch thing, I think it was really well-intentioned. It hasn't produced the kind of results that they had hoped. And I think when you do neighboring, when you just start to do little things in your neighborhood and you start to think holistically about it, you get the crime piece. Okay. Like, what's the book? Bowling Alone, Robert Putnam states that in neighborhoods where people know the first names of their neighbors, the crime rate is 80% less than in neighborhoods where they don't. And so he's got a lot of research around that. And so when you go after the holistic connecting with people, you get the crime stuff, because if you know your neighbor next door and a U-Haul truck pulls up and you know that they're not moving, you actually reach out and talk to them. You do something about it. It happens organically, not out of this kind of crusader mentality of we got to all stop crime together. And I think before this current pandemic that we're in, the pace of life for everybody is so intense that the value of neighboring was kind of on the downswing. And then we commute to a lot of places a lot more than we used to. And we haven't built our houses and our neighborhoods in the same way. That everything used to be geared towards the front yard with a patio, with all those things. And now in a lot of suburban environments, everything's geared towards the backyard. So there's a lot of different reasons over the last 30 years that kind of the value of neighboring has dipped a little bit, but there are some good signs that it's starting to come back up. And I think people want it. They're thirsting for it. It's something that they really miss. You talk to most people, they go, oh, I remember what it was like when I grew up. I wish I still had that. And so, and I see more and more people, a lot of what we're doing is helping people rediscover the art of neighboring. Yeah, well, I think because of some of the advances in technology, especially in the last 20 years, with the fact that we're all walking around with a computer in our pocket now, most people, when they leave work, they don't actually leave work. And so, and this has just kind of become a way of living, is their work. People actually, when they used to leave work, they were done working. I know that's a foreign concept. So then you would be done working, then you'd come home, And, and you weren't sitting there all the time checking an email, a text, continuing. And so there was this sense of, hey, when you're working hard, work hard. And when you're not working, don't work. By the way, I actually think that's the best way to live. I don't think like having the accelerator down all the time is real sustainable. But when you're never really off, it affects the amount of time that you have to engage with the people that live closest to you. And so margin's a big deal. My wife and I have talked about, and try to check each other and go, hey, are we living in a way in which we're actually interruptible? For a long time, I don't think my neighbors experienced me as an interruptible person, or somebody who was very visible. And I think those are two, and it's been rejuvenating for me and for my family. And it's it seems countercultural, but this has been one of the great gifts of COVID is more people have margin around their homes than ever before. I've seen more of my neighbors out everywhere you go. People talking. I've seen more of my neighbors, visibly seen them during this season than I ever have before. And so I think it's one of the silver linings is people have been able to connect just because they've been more visible and they've just been around more. But I lived like that for a long time. Because I think subconsciously I didn't want to get to know my neighbors because I didn't know what was going on behind that door. I had this bad feeling it was going to be messy. And guess what? Now that I've got to know my neighbors, it is messy. It is, but it's also beautiful at the same time. And so I just think, when you just get in your car and a lot of people will go, listen, I'm really into stuff going on at my local rescue mission or volunteering at this place or that place. And I'm like, that's great. Do you know there's real needs though, like right outside your front door? You may live in a really affluent place. There's real needs. There's real people who you can connect with and make a difference in their lives. And so in my neighborhood, I've found that to be true. And for a long time, I just didn't even know what was going on because I wasn't very present. And so I think I get it. The people who are like, yeah, I do neighboring with the people on my sports team or at work and all that kind of stuff. I go, yeah, that's awesome. Those are really important relationships. But those people that live around you too, if you'll lean into that, you'll find some amazing things. And I think too, this has been one of the things that I didn't see coming. It's really easy in our culture to just spend time with people who think about the world the way that you do. And I think this is why there's such a polarization right now in our culture. I think it's one of the most toxic things going on. The beauty of actually getting to know the people who live right around you is if you start getting to know people based on proximity, you're guaranteeing yourself that you're going to be hanging out with people who think about the world differently than you do. Okay. I mean, like I have been my one neighbor down the street, one of the people I'm closest to in my whole neighborhood. I mean, he is a raging libertarian, like all the way as you could ever imagine. And I don't have anything against libertarians or anything, but that's not who I am. But he and I talk about things and we talk about the way that we view the world differently and get into things. But we're at the end of the day, we're still friends. Like our friendship in what we have supersedes our differences about the way that we think decisions should be made about the economy or about politics or all that stuff. And I think that's what we need more of. I think that's what that's what we need more of in our world. We need people who are connected to each other, even though they have very different opinions about politics or the economy or how we should be handling issues with the poor. And so I didn't see that coming, and I would just encourage anybody who's listening to this, if you start to base relationships on proximity, one of the gifts is that you're going to get to know people who have very different opinions than you do and who see the world differently than you do. And I think that's really important right now. Like here was where my wife and I started. And then we've just been following the breadcrumbs ever since. So if you're out there, you're listening to this and you want to figure out, okay, I like some of these ideas. Maybe you don't, but you just want to try it or do an experiment. I took a napkin, a tic-tac-toe board, and in the middle, I put my house. And then those 8 squares around it represented the 8 closest households to me. And then I just sat there. And first, without doing anything, my buddy who wrote the book with me, Jay, he did this, like, he goes, hey, we're all going to do a test. So here's my test for all the listeners, okay? You think about your house, then you think about the 8 closest houses or apartments or ranches, wherever you live. Think about the 8 most logical ones. and then just write down the names of the adults in those 8 places. And I remember doing this for the first time. I'm sitting there and I had that moment. I could write down both adults' names in 2 of those 8 boxes. And like I said before, I had this moment. I'm like, oh no, I've met all these people. And it was really convicting to me because I had to come face to face with the fact that most of these people, I had met them, but they weren't important enough to me for me to remember their name. And so I put this little napkin up on my fridge, and I started to have some of those awkward conversations of just, admitting to people I didn't know their name. And I could have looked it up online. I could have gone and checked out their mail, although I think that's that's illegal. But there's something about having a face-to-face interaction with people, of admitting hey, I know we've met before. I didn't know your name. And then I did something really important. I started to write those down. So I wrote them down. I put them in a visible place. So now all of a sudden I went from, hey man, to hey Matt. That's a huge difference. Hey man to hey Matt it's massive. And then to just using somebody's name when you see them, and then it's just fascinating how it happens organically over time. You begin to just go, hey, did you see the end of that game? Did you, could you have 5 minutes? Could you help me just move something in my garage? I just need to move it from one side to the other. And all that stuff is really important to neighborhoods and to development, but it never happens if you don't learn their name. And so a big part of what we do is say there's great value in learning and retaining and using somebody's name. And this little tic-tac-toe board that you put on your fridge, and that's a great tool. And it gives you this visual of going, how well am I doing in my neighborhood? And so for me and my wife, and for a lot of our friends here, and for the movement that we started here, this little simple tic-tac-toe board on your fridge was the secret sauce. And so, sorry, I went on a tangent there. I just forgot. I forgot how important that is. I wanted to make sure that we mentioned it. It's the quickest way to build relationships inside of a neighborhood. I'm one of those people that I go in trying to fix every problem, trying to serve everybody. So when I first started into this, I'm going to put on my little, super neighbor cape and start figuring out, I wonder if there's a widow and on my block, and if her fence needs, and that's all good. That's all really good and well-meaning. Even I'm going to cook something and take it. That's important. Don't not do that. But if you're always in that mode, real relationships are two-way streets. And so if you're always in the mode of, I'm the person serving, I'm the person delivering stuff, and you're that person that looks like you always have your stuff together, there's a ceiling on those types of relationships. And it took me a while to figure this out. And just doing something small, like seeing somebody who loves their garden and asking, hey, if I was going to do a garden, if you're curious, just asking for advice. My one neighbor's lawn, it looks like it's off of a golf course, and my lawn's right next to it, and it doesn't look like that at all. And so a while back, I looked at him and I said, all right, hey, tell me what's going on over here. Tell me what you do here that I'm not doing. And he just came alive. He started sharing. He's like, okay, January, I'm laying down this fertilizer here. I'm watering this many times. And he gave me an 8-minute sermon on how to care for a lawn. And it was January to December. And when he got done, I remember thinking to myself, I didn't say this out loud, but I remember thinking to myself, man, that is totally not worth it. But I didn't say that out loud. I just said, I could see how passionate he was. There was an exchange happened just by me asking about something he's passionate about. And that same thing happens, these little exchanges happen when you ask to borrow something, that you need, instead of going and spending $40 on it at Home Depot when you're only going to use it once a year, or whatever it is. And so what you just touched on there, David, the art of receiving is huge. It's huge. And I think for some of us, if you find yourself as one of those people who you're always the one serving, you're always the one taking the initiative, that's good, but maybe take the initiative to invite somebody to meet a deficit that you have in your life, instead of always, thinking I've got to be the one with the answers. You'll be shocked at what the payout is. So I'll tell you about a couple experiences from my neighborhood. So we don't have any African-American neighbors right now in our little loop of 40. With several Latino families. My immediate next door neighbor is from Laos. And when we first moved in, we always just saw there was just always people from Laos, that just looked different than us. And then they would cook this food that smelled amazing. It would kind of come wafting over, but it didn't smell like food that like we would eat. And they would have these huge parties, and everyone there looked like them. And I just kind of thought in the back of my mind, I don't know, I was a little bit intimidated of like what it would be like. It seemed like their whole world were people who had come in the last 2 generations from either Laos or Cambodia or Thailand. And so over time, it's like 2 or 3 years, and I knew their names are Pet and Home. I remember just like getting curious about their food and just saying like, hey, would you ever be like, could we just come over and like have you introduce our kids to what Laotian food is, which is pretty similar to Thai food, I've learned, by the way. And so we did that, and in doing that, starting to learn, like to connect with them. And then we started to ask about their story. It was an amazing story of actually coming over at the end of the war and how they actually ended up in the Denver metro area. It's unbelievable. It's this beautiful, incredible story that our kids and my wife and I have been exposed to and get to know them. But I remember asking them, they for the longest, I was sitting there thinking, they don't want us in their world. They seem really busy and who they're hanging out with. And of course they looked at us and like, we're immigrants. We didn't think you actually wanted to hang out with us. And so here's like these two, like I'm sitting right next door to this neighbor, and we're both making these assumptions about each other and about what we want and who we are. And so I think getting to know them has broken down a lot of those assumptions. And I would tell your friend that asked the question, I would just say, listen, go for it. And it's going to be weird. It's going to be messy. But you have more to lose by not going for it than you do by going for it. And I would say we just need to have grace with each other. When our kid says something dumb, that's not culturally appropriate, I'm begging and hoping this is a great learning moment for my child, and I'm begging and hoping for grace on the other side too. And I've received it over and over again. I just feel like it's been amazing. And so anymore, I have been a student in the past.
And so with this class we're doing, I've been talking a lot about becoming an engaged neighbor.
Yeah.
Kind of meshing the two words and ideas. So neighboring, engagement, you kind of see that working together.
Huge.
Different.
Dude, neighboring's like the engagement for dummies. The engagement's that next level of like, but I think they're the same. And so, but I think a lot of what we've done, and I think this has been the biggest leadership lesson I've learned through this whole thing, David. I mean, I think that little tic-tac-toe refrigerator magnet, a lot of people just make those on their own, but then we made a magnet and we've given them out to people. We've given out 380,000 magnets now. So there's 380,000 households, that theoretically have this thing sitting on their fridge. And I think the thing I've learned through this whole deal, my whole life, most people told me, Dave, good leaders set the bar high. Good leaders set the bar high. And I think that's true. Like, if you're working with a small team, you set the bar high, people will either come close to the bar or they'll get over it. But what I've learned about starting a movement, the key isn't to set the bar high. The key is to set the bar so low that people can't crawl underneath it. And it's so like, we didn't come into this neighboring thing saying we're going to start crime watch and do all, and we're going to like start a massive block party movement. We just came into this thing saying, hey, would you just be willing to learn and retain and use your neighbors' names? I mean, we set the bar that low. And when you set the bar that low, it's shocking. The number of people that'll do it goes through the roof. And what we got lucky with is we set the bar low, and the learning people's names, it's a Trojan horse to get them to do all kinds of other stuff. Because learning a name is like stepping on a moving sidewalk. You kind of learn that name, and then all of a sudden all these other things start, all these other dominoes with some of your name. Some of my neighbors are just busy. I learned their name and they just kind of go on and live pretty secluded lives. But you learn 8 of your neighbors' names with some of those people, you're going to start a domino falling that's going to lead to a lot of other stuff. And so that's why I just keep going back to the name thing. Like, yeah, the hard thing in neighboring, it's the key to neighboring is being willing to lean into some mildly awkward moments. So it's mildly awkward to invite somebody over for the first time. It's mildly awkward to ask somebody about their lawn or their garden. It's mildly awkward to admit that you don't know somebody's name. But those, if you're just willing to lean into those mildly awkward moments, the payout on the other end is massive. And so that'd be my encouragement. There's a movement called.
All right. Well, that's a word from Dave Runyon. And let's see, stop share, stop share. All right. Well, it's great to hear from Dave Runyon, and he's a great resource and a very personal guy. If you haven't read that book, I'd recommend it. Well, let's move on to our second guest. We're going to keep things rolling, and then if you have questions, you can ask some of those in chat, or we can communicate after the fact even of the program, or maybe a little bit at the end. But Rachael Tripp is our next presenter today, and Rachael works with the Community Partnership of the Ozarks, and she has a report for us to give on some cleanup projects that Community Partnership of the Ozarks has administered on behalf of the city of Springfield. And these are neighborhood-focused cleanup projects, kind of a unique approach, and it also is a nice combination with the presentation that comes after Rachael as well. So I think Rachael has controls. I'm going to hand it over to her.
Yeah, thank you, David. I do have controls, and I got everything working on my end, so I'm ready to go. Yeah, so today we're going to talk about our neighborhood cleanup program in Springfield, Missouri. And like David said, I work at Community Partnership of the Ozarks, and I am a community development specialist. So I work with neighborhood associations in Springfield. There are 22 neighborhood associations right now, and we help them with networking, with education events. We have leadership summits that we plan every year. And then we also help out with the neighborhood cleanup program, which is a huge part of our responsibility, and we partner with the city of Springfield on that. They provide the funding, and they also provide support as needed. And we also, and you'll see throughout the presentation, we also partner with, we have a contract with a really big trash company, Republic Services here in Missouri. So they are a huge part of helping us make this program successful, as well as our neighborhood associations, of course. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. For those of you who are not familiar with Community Partnership, we are a nonprofit organization here in Springfield that focuses on affordable housing and homeless prevention, early childhood family development, community and neighborhood development, and prevention services. So that's substance abuse prevention, violence prevention, things of that nature. So here's the presentation. This is titled Annual Report on Neighborhood Cleanups. This is really reporting out on our successes that we had last year, but I also included a lot of background information on what cleanups are. So we'll get started. So neighborhood cleanups, the cleanup program has been in Springfield for a very long time. I'm going to say over 10 years. I can't remember the exact number, so don't quote me on that, but a very long time. And it started with one of our community development specialists at Community Partnership just noticed a need in a neighborhood and noticed that it needed to be cleaned up, and just to promote pride, health, and safety in that neighborhood and bring people together around a common goal. So that idea was pitched, and it ended up being picked up by the city of Springfield, and they ended up funding it and helping us make it what it is today. It started off small, and now it's pretty big. So here is myself, and then Hannah King as well. She's our neighborhood event coordinator, and she is a huge part of this neighborhood cleanup program. She really does the coordination of it and the planning piece, and we work very closely together to make this as successful as possible. And you met Hannah a couple of months ago. She presented about the Springfield Tool Library, and I think she's on here today as well. And she's going to help me answer any questions that you have. So if you have any questions as we're going along, go ahead and throw that in the chat box. And the pictures that we use throughout this presentation are pictures from our actual cleanup events in Springfield. One big part of what we do at Community Partnership is building strong neighborhoods and communities. And the cleanup program focuses on these things here: community engagement, building relationships, building social capital, which is huge, giving a voice and providing opportunities for people to give service, give back to their community, and really take ownership of their neighborhood, and building that ownership, that belonging and capacity. So the neighborhood cleanup program goals are to provide dumpsters to dispose of items that are not typically allowed in trash disposal. That's going to be your big bulky furniture items. We get a lot of chairs, a lot of recliners, a lot of beds. We do, when we have the opportunity to recycle things, we try to do that as much as possible. That's going to be a really big focus for us moving forward, is that sustainability piece. We've worked with the city before on mattress recycling, and we hope to provide more recycling opportunities. But these things that are disposed of at these cleanups are going to our landfill. We want to do this to reduce neighborhood clutter and nuisances, unite under a common goal, a common purpose, and create a renewed sense of pride in our city and our neighborhoods. So this is what the bulk of what Hannah and I do. So we work closely with the city, with the neighborhood associations, with our contracted trash company. We send out bids. Through the city requires us to do that. So we send out bids to multiple trash companies, and then we end up choosing a trash hauler. We schedule the dates for the upcoming year. We send out applications to neighborhood associations, and they get to choose the 3 dates that work best for them. Then we ensure that each association has a site to host a cleanup. A lot of neighborhood associations have relationships with churches and schools in their neighborhoods, and that's where they end up having their cleanup event. And these neighborhood cleanup events are one Saturday. They get one Saturday for fiscal year, and it's typically about 4 hours. So either 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. or 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. We work closely with the assigned cleanup coordinator, and that's the person that the neighborhood association chooses to handle coordinating the cleanup event. We make sure that they have volunteers that can help the day of the event, and typically those volunteers are going to be members of the neighborhood association. Also, if there's a church that's very involved with neighborhood, the churches usually provide volunteers, and just other people just wanting to help and get involved in their neighborhood. Then we get the word out. We help get the word out. So we help create, design, and mail postcards to advertise cleanup events. We try to do that at least 3 weeks prior to each event. And then we also share events about share details about the event on our webpage, our neighborhood newsletter that we have in Springfield, and on social media platforms. And then we make it happen. We show up, we help out. Hannah and I have been known to jump into some dumpsters with the volunteers. We make sure that they have all the supplies they need. We bring some things, and we also stay to make sure that the cleanup site is clean and secure after the end of the event. This is a message from our president and CEO at Community Partnership, and her name is Janet Dankert. She's amazing. And she says that the neighborhood cleanups program is a critical initiative responsible for removing thousands of tons of trash, bulky items, scrap metal, tires, and brush leaves from our neighborhood since its inception more than 15 years ago. It's truly a civic engagement and collaboration in action as neighbors come together during these cleanup events to help make our community a great place to live, work, and play. And that pretty much sums up what it is. It's just a great way to get involved and give back. So cleanups make a huge difference. We have 3 major impact areas: health, pride, and community. A clean neighborhood, of course, is a healthy neighborhood. We all know the hazards that clutter and trash on the sidewalks and alleyways become by attracting rodents and different bugs and just wildlife, and it creates a potential for accidents. So keeping our neighborhood clean can prevent these risks. And creating pride is so important as well. Neighborhoods can easily fall into disrepair, and when people come together and people care, you can improve the place that you call home. And then community. Cleanups bring neighbors together to support a common goal. And this is a great way to increase participation in neighborhood associations. And something that's great about these cleanup events too, is that when they hold these events on these Saturday mornings, they a lot of times host membership drives. They go out and meet their neighbors that maybe they've never met before that are coming to the cleanup for the first time. And I've seen a lot of people get involved with their neighborhood association just by coming to a cleanup event. And it's also a way for neighborhood associations to raise money as well. So here's Hannah actually in front of one of our dumpsters. This is probably one of my favorite pictures. So now we're going to talk about a little bit more about our fiscal year 2021, which was last fall and spring. So these are our partners that we have. We partner with the City of Springfield Environmental Services. Republic Services is our trash company, Computer Recycling Center, the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. So the environmental services, they provide yard waste passes to our yard waste recycling center in Springfield, and they cover the cost of yard waste and brush recycling. They completely cover it for us. So that's a really good benefit for neighborhoods, because that's hard to get rid of and it can sometimes be expensive. So that's just a way to bring another resource to these neighborhood associations. Our trash company is Republic Services, and here's a picture of their trash truck here. They have been a partner with us for many, many years, and we do pay them a discounted fee. They give us a discount on driver hours and tonnage, and they do not charge us for delivery, hauling, fuel recovery, or invoice fees. And we do, we save a ton of money. And like I said earlier, we do have to bid out every year, and so that those discounts do change a little bit every year. But yeah, they've been great to work with us and really have helped us save so much money and be able to bring this to neighborhoods in Springfield. And then the Computer Recycling Center in Ozarks Headwaters Recycling District. So we received a grant, and we're actually going to apply for a grant again next year. At the end of this year for the next year. We received a grant from Ozarks Headwaters Recycling District to cover costs associated with electronics recycling, specifically TV recycling. So we partnered with Computer Recycling Center, and we were able to send out postcards on the cleanup postcards to neighborhood residents in our neighborhood associations, offering them one free TV disposal at Computer Recycling Center. And some neighborhood associations even decided to collect TVs on site and deliver them to the center so people wouldn't have to actually go there on their own time. So we got rid of a lot of TVs that way and kept electronics out of the landfill, which is huge. And then the City of Springfield, of course, a huge part. We could not do what we do without them. They fund the program and they provide us support as needed and technical support. So this year, we partnered with the City of Springfield on their inaugural Clean Green Springfield initiative. Those of us around the Springfield area probably heard a lot about this. Clean Green Springfield came about it was earlier in March, April. It came about over I think the winter holiday. I can't remember. There was a city council meeting towards the end of the year last year. And there was a gentleman that noticed that our city was getting kind of cluttered and there was trash everywhere, and really, spoke up to city council about this and said, we need to do something. We need to clean up Springfield. And so the city took that to heart and they created this Clean Green Springfield initiative. And they held from April through June, they held different cleanup events where people could do point of pride cleanups. So in your neighborhood, you might have a park, a trail. You could get volunteers together, a big group of volunteers, go out, clean it up. And the City of Springfield Public Works Department took care of picking up the trash. So they would drive along where the cleanup happened and pick the trash up and dispose of it for people. And then we partnered with them because we thought this would be a cool idea to bring new volunteers to our cleanup program. And we actually brought in 75 new volunteers in the months of April, May, and June through this program. So we gave people the opportunity to sign up to help at a neighborhood association cleanup. This was just amazing. And a lot of our neighborhood associations were, concerned that they may not have enough volunteers this past year just because of, COVID and the challenges that has, brought to us. And there were a couple of neighborhood associations that said if they didn't have the Clean Green volunteers to help them, their cleanup would not have happened, or they would not have been able to do curbside pickups, which is something that neighborhoods have the option to do, to go around and pick up trash from their neighbors' yards. So it was huge for them. We had groups from our city utilities department come out and volunteer. League of Women Voters of Southwest Missouri came out and volunteered. Girl Scouts and our Springfield Public Schools Foundation. So a lot of really big groups came out and they met neighbors that they would not have necessarily met before. And just a lot of really new relationships were built. And hopefully they will be dedicated volunteers for us in the future. And here's a Springfield, a picture of us. This is Community Partnership and United Way of the Ozarks posing. We actually did a Point of Pride cleanup and we walked around downtown Springfield and picked up some trash. So that was fun. So now I'm going to throw some data at you. We have lots of quantitative and qualitative data. So here is the impact that we made last year. So we served nearly 1,400 households, nearly 400 volunteers last fall and spring. We recycled 526 televisions. We do scrap metal recycling at some neighborhoods. So we collected 25 tons of scrap metal that we were able to keep out of the landfill and recycle. 43 brush dumpsters were taken to the recycling center. 117 trash dumpsters were taken to the landfill, and then 253 tons of waste was diverted from our neighborhoods and taken to the landfill during these cleanups. So huge, huge impact. And we just could not have done it without our volunteers, without the city, our public services, our wonderful neighborhood associations. And if you were part of a neighborhood association that had a cleanup and you're on this call today, I think this might be the first time you're seeing this. So this is nice that you're here. Yep. So we have some amazing qualitative data as well. A lot of people gave feedback on our cleanups, and I'll just read just a couple here. So Becky Volz, she's the president of our Woodland Heights Neighborhood Association. She says that the cleanups are the highlight of the year for a lot of our neighbors. She hears more thank yous, and we are so grateful for this at cleanup events more than any other event. Our building development services inspector says your neighborhood is cleaner. I can tell that you had a cleanup recently. Cleanups are an inspiration for neighbors helping neighbors, and neighbors who meet each other at cleanups have ended up working together afterward. The cleanup site has been a great place to collaborate with and get to know our neighbors. It has been the most interactive event we do, especially on our curbside pickups when they actually go to their neighbors' houses and pick up trash from their sidewalk or from their curb. And then the Brentwood Neighborhood Association, Brent Rinker, he says the neighborhood cleanups are extremely well received by the Brentwood neighborhood. Some of our neighbors make multiple trips to eliminate those big pieces of junk that can be hard to dispose of. We also notice some people hauling in their neighbor's garbage when that person is unable to do so. So they're helping each other out. It's amazing how many dumpsters can be filled on a Saturday morning. And we filled a lot of dumpsters. It's pretty interesting seeing all that trash. And then Eric Pauley, president of our Phelps Grove Neighborhood Association, says the neighborhood cleanup program builds on the foundation of community. When we work together towards a common goal, we forge a stronger community. As a friend and neighbor said at our very first cleanup, it's just neighbors helping neighbors. And they are truly my favorite part of my job. I just love going out because Hannah and I, we are on site, we are helping, we are there, and we have built some very strong relationships with people. It's been great. It's one of my favorite parts of my job. So looking ahead, we are gearing up for our next cleanup season, which it will start in September of this year. And our goals are to provide one cleanup to each city recognized neighborhood association in fall 21 and 22. We have goals to increase the number of partners and volunteers. And then we're also going to apply for that electronics recycling grant again and hopefully get that. And that is it. I think I covered everything. Yes, I did. So this is my fancy thank you slide that I created. These are all we work with. I'm pretty proud of this one. It's my favorite slide. These are all of the neighborhoods that we work with, that we have cleanup programs for, cleanup events for, and yeah, it's been great. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing.
What a huge undertaking. And if you've ever been stuck with a big grill that you couldn't get rid of, or a big mattress you couldn't get rid of and had no way to haul it. I mean, these types of events are wonderful. I think some in this Southwest Missouri area, some communities do it as a whole community. The city will fund the effort, but I like this approach so much more because of getting the neighborhoods and connected and involved and neighbors working together. I think it's a great example.
Yeah, that's the best part of it. Yeah.
I think Hannah has answered a couple of questions that have come up, but what about areas that don't have a neighborhood association?
Areas
Does that apply to anybody in the city of Springfield?
What was the last part of that? Sorry.
Does that even apply to anyone in the city of Springfield? They wouldn't have a neighborhood association?
Yeah, so there are some neighborhoods that don't have official associations, and it's best to try to become an association, and you have to have a dedicated group of volunteers that are able to start the association and start a board. And we work closely with Elena Owen with the city of Springfield, and she works with the planning department, and she helps people. She helps groups of people form neighborhood associations. So we work closely with her to help out with that. And we also have some trainings that we can give about how to create a board, how to facilitate meetings, how to become a nonprofit, because some neighborhood associations can apply to become a nonprofit. So that's going to be your best way to do that, is become a neighborhood association. And then the cleanup program is something that you automatically get. You get an option to have a cleanup. Now, if you don't have an official association, or you don't have enough people to come together to really start one, you can still host a cleanup in your area. It would be something that you would get a group of people together that would be able to fund it and get a central location, but you can still have one. It just wouldn't be supported funding wise by the city.
That's pretty helpful to have that funding piece.
Yes.
Help do a big neighborhood for sure. And hey, one other question before we'll move on to this other parallel example. Someone asked, is there a neighborhood event coordinator job description available? I'm imagining pitching this role to the city's Department of Neighborhoods. I think that's from Chet, who's in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah. I can send you Chet the description that we have. So I'll send that to you via chat here in just a second. I can pull it up. But yeah, I can do that to you. That's a great idea.
Yeah, this has a lot of applications. So now Rachel's on record having shared this. We can help spread the word about the good work that's being done. And maybe this is a helpful example. I know you're open to other people contacting you if they have questions or they want to know more about this effort and the approach it's taken in Springfield.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank
you. Please reach out to Rachel. I'll share her contact information or an email, maybe at least, in the follow-up email that goes out from this program. So, well, one other video today to share from a fellow class member, actually. Sunni is in Roanoake, Virginia, and we want to hear about what they're doing in Roanoake, in her neighborhood, in the area of Plawking. If you've never heard that word, you're about to. And joining in today and having a little visit. And things, and I think you've got some great experience and some great advice that other neighborhoods can be learning from.
Well, we'll see. I hope so.
So you've been involved and interested in this since about 2017 or so, and you got so involved you ended up becoming the president of the neighborhood group. And this is a pretty large.
Thought I would do.
And you were saying this is a pretty large neighborhood. This is like 2,000 plus homes. So this is a big area. Tell us a little bit about that neighborhood and area and what we might see if we visited there, or what, and maybe even some of the pros and cons, I guess, of it.
Sure. Well, the city of Roanoake is divided into 4 quadrants for whatever reasoning that was when it happened. But so we have southeast, northeast, southwest, northwest, and I am in the southeast quadrant. And as you said, that's about 200 homes, but it's also about 12 actual neighborhoods within the southeast quadrant. And so it just seems that the way reputations get assigned to each quadrant is just based on one part of the quadrant, not the entire area. So our reputation is based on our worst neighborhoods in the quadrant, which unfortunately are riddled with slums and blight and litter and all that comes along with that. So so we kind of are battling in Southeast the rough reputation of that's not a place that you really want to go and definitely don't want to live there. So we're fighting against that kind of reputation.
Yeah, but it sounds like you've got some pretty good ideas in your toolbox that you've put into play. We had a little pre-visit before the interview, and I picked up on both your approach to have positive dialogue and positive meetings, and then also a lot of what you're doing in the area of cleanup. So share a little bit about those two aspects.
Well, so I live here, and I have friends that live here, and we have a pleasant and positive experience in the neighborhood, and we love it here. So I wanted to think of a way to outwardly express a simple way to passers through that, you know, this really is a lovable neighborhood, and that there are people here that love it, and you can love it too if you just get to know us. But so just a simple logo that says I Heart SE, SD for Southeast, of course. And we put that on a bright green background and printed t-shirts and yard signs and bracelets and stickers and just started distributing them as much as possible, and to the point now where we're selling them, not making any money on them, but just to get it out there. So anyway, just to express that, you know, give it another look here, because there are people that do love where they live here in Southeast and care about it and are trying to take action to make it a better place. So so that was one of the campaigns that we started. And then from that, you know, just enjoying taking a walk in my neighborhood with my neighbors. I was doing that with one, and we said, you know, gosh, we should really bring a grocery bag to pick up some of this trash while we're out here walking around. And so we said, okay, let's do that next time. And how about we like invite people to come with us and do it because there's quite a bit of litter. So let's bring some more people along. And so that turned into this idea of Southeast Plawking. And plawking is picking up litter while walking. And we did not come up with that term. There's a Swedish fitness trend called Plawking that started some time ago. And we said, we are not going to be running around picking up litter. We'll take a walk and do it. And so we called it Plawking, and it's really taken off.
I love that idea. I'm sure you've been plawking, so you've been picking up litter, but have you seen that it encourages others maybe to join in or to not litter in the first place, or what other benefits are you seeing from that?
Sure. Really, yes, to both of those. We'll have people, of course, be honking and waving and thanking us as they're driving by. There's people that will pull over on the side of the road and say, like, what are you doing and why are you doing this and how do we get involved? So that's neat. And some people will come along as, you know, on another pluck. So we do it weekly. So every Tuesday at 5:15, we meet at, there's roughly 6 meeting places that we have that we rotate through. And it didn't start out this way in the beginning. We were kind of just all over the place. We'd meet at a park or a parking lot and whatever. But now we've kind of narrowed it down to there's 2 main roads that are most visible for, you know, drivers, of course, that are seeing the trash, but also it's the most visibility to see us out there doing it. And not that we want, you know, the recognition necessarily for that, but we just want people to see that there are people who care about the neighborhood and are taking action. And so it has rounded up, you know, some additional assistance from people that are passing by, and maybe we'll think twice about throwing litter out of their car if they see somebody out there.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Hopefully.
Yeah, and I imagine taking these walks have helped form some new relationships as well.
Sure, I will definitely say that picking up litter is really not the most important thing. It seems like it would be, but really, like I said, getting out there, just showing people that there are people that care, and also just bringing neighbors together. When you take a walk with your neighbors, like you're just at this slow pace and you have opportunity for conversation and to look around and see, where you are and who you're surrounded by. And also, it's really opened up opportunity for us to meet neighbors that are maybe sitting on their porch and they want to holler and say, like, what are y'all doing? And so we've had a lot of really great engagement with our neighbors that way as well. And people will bring out a cooler of water when they see us coming, or like one lady, she drove on down to 7-Eleven, bought a case and tracked us down to have afterwards. And so there's been really a lot of really neat engagement with neighbors that aren't plocking with us, but also that are plocking with us. I have developed friendships through plocking that, especially through the pandemic when there wasn't a whole lot more to do, that have really become special friends. And I think that they would say the same.
Wow, that is wonderful. But are there some steps or advice to starting a successful plocking program in another person's neighborhood that you would offer? Some lessons learned, I guess?
Well, I'll say too, so this idea that has started in our southeast quadrant, we've had neighborhood leaders from other quadrants that are now coming to our plot to see, like, what are we doing? How do we do it? And we're getting ready to launch a Roanoake Plockers citywide program for group neighborhood leaders in other quadrants that want to start plocking as well with their neighbors. So that is coming soon. So I'm kind of in these discussions with them about, like, yeah, how do you get started? Well, pick a day that you're able to commit to, and maybe, if it's not weekly, that's fine, but just put it out there on social media has really been the best way to get the word out about this. And also, so just put the date out there that you want to invite people to come along and pick up litter. It's so simple. You don't really need a lot of supplies. Some grocery bags will do, some gardening gloves, whatever, but just invite people to come along with you. But even if people don't show up, like, you're still going to be picking up litter and doing your good work anyway. So hopefully you can rally some friends to help you. But either way, you're going to get the work done. But we do have a Clean Valley Council here that is able to supply gloves and trash, the big orange trash bags and some litter grabbers. So we have that nonprofit that has been helping us with that as well. So and I don't know how to say what more is involved in getting it started. Just if people see you doing it and you start inviting people to do it, I think that people want to do this action. They just need a leader to step up and invite them to do it with them. So and in addition to neighbors joining us, the nonprofits that are doing work in the neighborhood, they have started coming just so that they can get another picture of the neighborhood that they're working in, this ground level kind of, and also to introduce them to the neighbors that they're serving here as well. But we've had city council members that are running for city council or have been elected. The sheriff, 2 candidates that were running, they both came at different times. Boy Scouts, local running stores have jumped on to help with us a few times. So really the partnerships that are also being created through this has been really fun and neat to see happening as well.
Yeah, wow, that's tremendous. Well, plocking is the place to be, it sounds like then.
Really, it's quite a simple idea, really. And like I said, I think people want to do it whether they know it or not yet, but really people get hooked once they come. There's something addicting about it. I guess it's that kind of instant gratification of seeing like a really messy area and then 30 minutes later it's sparkling and
yes.
pretty. We have something called Love Southeast Fest. It's a big festival that we try to have each year. And anytime that we're out promoting that, anything you're talking about love and I heart and this and that, if you're talking about love and hearts, like nobody can get mad about that or have anything negative to say about that. So it's really just been an easy way to push out positive vibes and, and same with picking up litter, like nobody's gonna be mad about that. So it's just so many opportunities to spread positivity.
Well, I think that's a great example of what one person can really motivate others to do, and it fits right in with some of the themes we've been talking about. So I appreciate the opportunity to learn more about Plawking.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I believe Sunni is on here today. If anyone has questions for her about this Plawking effort. Anybody have questions? Want to unmic or put them in chat? Sunni, it may be that we covered that topic so eloquently and so completely already that there's no questions. I can tell you that here in my local community, I've had a chance to share about this already, and there is interest in the idea. So I'll keep you posted on how that develops. But this is one of those examples of things that come up in this class that I would encourage other participants to share about, share with other neighbors or other connections they may have as an option or a tool that can be used in your neighborhood, and point them to the video after I get that posted if you want, or point them to some other resources that we try to have available. This is a great example, and appreciate Sunni taking the time to record that when I thought that I wasn't going to be here in person and on vacation, but instead home quarantining with COVID. I'm at the end of it. This is my last day of quarantine, so happy for that. Well, we're at the 1 o'clock hour. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. Sorry about the confusion with the calendar holders. Meeting dates, I won't do it that way again. And we'll have a word out soon on the August meeting. Waiting on a couple of people to see exactly which speaker we do in August, but we'll keep these rolling, and always glad to have you here live and in person. Feel free to stay on if there's something you would like to visit about.